often they would be out in the desert doing, work and ceremonies and teachings and stuff like that. And then she would just walk right up to the fire out of nowhere, right? And she kind of scared Lynn Andrews because it was just the way that she operated and was. It was just a little bit, frightening for Lynn Andrews. Sometimes these types of shamans can be frightening. They can be really hair-raising, can be some of the most terrifying experiences you've ever had in your life. Because the energy and just, they're not really emotionally really attached to anything, right? They're just not attached. So what if it's more like once you find an edge that you can walk out, and in the Lynn Andrews books, Twin Dreams, she's talked a lot about riding a horse, Arian. And Arian is a special horse that goes in and out of the timelines as well and doesn't age. And Twin Dreams has been known to ride him into, this world and out, exiting out, copy pasting out. So what if it's, what if it is like the Truman Show and there is a door on the edge? And once you, and not spiritual, like I'm not talking about spiritual or energetic, like I'm talking about like bottom line, physical experience. And what if you, find the edge of the movie set that you're in? I don't know how long you have to walk or whatever else. And you find the edge of that movie set, and you open the door and you get out, and maybe on the other side of the controlled, what do they call it in science, control group? You get yourself out of the rat control group, out to the other side, then you live thousands and thousands of years, right? But inside the control group, there are hints of this information of, I think some of the Anunnaki are said to have lived 34,000 human year life. Some of the kings, right? So in the same, like in the same body kind of a thing. So what if it's like, it's just a door, like it's not very far away, and you can open that door and just walk out of the movie set, just like Truman did on the movie set. And maybe it's that simple, but the problem is that, we're on this yo-yo journey of all these, copy-pasted belief systems. And the thing is like, I have a relationship with my star family. I'm a star kid. Like, I came here. I was placed here. I've never really met another person that's a legitimate star kid, right? Never had another conversation. Hunted people out that I heard that were that way. They refused to have conversations with me. Even I've approached all the UFO organizations. They don't really want to deal with me. I've approached Mary Rodwell, who supposedly, is identifying, recording, these star children on the planet, which I don't deny the star kids on the planet at all. But I think she's an agent. She's bad. I think she's super bad because of the correspondence that I've had with her proved to me that she was evil and dark and an agent of deception. But my star family does not. A lot of this kind of weird information that people get are books that have been written. So, and I've read all this stuff, the Law of One series I've read. Lenny and I got a hold of those, what was that, the Angel of Josephine or something? What were those books, Lenny? I have them in my storage. I have to get them back to.
Anastasia?
The people. No, those 2-star angel
Oh,
books.
I remember.
Joseph and those guys had.
Oh, yeah. That was way out there.
Yeah, so I mean, the thing is, like, I've read through just pretty much everything about, extraterrestrials and the information that's here, and it's just so different. The one book that is pretty on spot is, it's called, I think, Interview with an Alien or something like that, and it was put out from the documents 1947 from this woman who was a nurse that actually telepathically talked to the great ET, that, you know, they eventually killed. But that book is probably the most spot on book out of any of the information that I've ever read that's here and available. And I think it's interesting how that we've gone from, and it's the languaging here that's the problem, right? I say this over and over and over again. It's the languaging that's the problem. Same with the health. If you're a doctor, you're going to call, you know, a problem with the spine, a bulging disc or a herniated disc. If you're a massage therapist, you're trained to call it a compression. If you're a chiropractor, you're trained to call it a subluxation. It's all the same thing. But the thing is they keep everyone confused by the language, right? So, and they keep the real information from getting everybody in. And this is the other thing too. What was that tower in the Bible?
Babel. It was the Tower of Babel.
The tower that they were, yeah, okay, so it was a tower that was said in the story that everybody was working on together to build up to the gods, right? Because they were sick and tired of dealing with these gods, you know, like looking down at them. So, well, and obviously we know that the word God is mistranslated in the Bible. The real translation would be gods from the original form. But, you know, I consider the Bible like, you know, a piece of fiction and a theater, you know, just like a theater play. Anyway.
Well, this radio show is a theater play also.
So they build this tower. They're building this tower because all the humanoids or whatever are working together, right? They've had it. They're done. So they're building this tower. Well, the thing is, like, where are they building that tower to? To the top of the shield that's over us little people here, kind of like the Truman Show. They're trying to build up to break through that, to get to the gods and be like, hey, man, you know, this isn't working for us. Look, you know, we've broken through your scam. And then what happens is the gods say that they, you know, blow apart this tower. And then what's the next thing that's said? That they toss, you know, basically the humanoids into different parts of this, you know, experience and force a different language on them so that they can't communicate or work together anymore.
Yeah.
I mean, other people would interpret that story a lot differently, like more about how powerful God was and God saying, you know, there are rules of this universe and you're not allowed to break these rules. So, you know, the thing is like the whole thing is built like on fraud and people not wanting to allow us to have control or to work together to maybe break free or find the doorway on the edge like Truman and walk out the door to the other side. Because once we do that, we're completely free, you know? So I was thinking about, I wonder what it's like. I wonder how many people have trekked across. So there's another crazy story. I was helping to bring farming work to return back to this Paiute reservation in Nevada. And I was asked there to come there by their council. I was taught, and then the BIA, Bureau of Indian Affairs, which is like the FBI, which they're criminals, big criminals. They work against their own people in a very harsh way. But anyway, I ended up getting thrown off the reservation and told never to come back because I was trying to put together community events where we fed the people and we talked about bringing food back to their landscape, maybe creating biofuel stations on native land so people passing through could have an option of biofuel. You know, a lot of these reservations have geothermal on them, so we could build algae ponds that we could actually, create biofuel from, and create like a huge natural biofuel system, and then have the natives having the biofuel. And so there's a lot of reservations in Nevada, so you could pretty much get biofuel anywhere, right? And it would be a good economy base for them. And then also getting, food production back going. Anyway, they got really angry at me and they kicked me off. Anyway, I spent a lot of time with this girl who was the daughter. She was younger than me, probably like 15 years. She had been running a Paiute museum without any funding. I was there in the winter time. She literally had no heat in her building. Sometimes the phones worked, sometimes not. And she was single-handedly trying to preserve her people's, information. And she told me this story about, because she spoke Paiute, because her grandfather was one of the last medicine people. And there were areas on the land that she was trained not to go, because they were areas that could seal you in, right? And they were left over from the original medicine people. Okay, so we're talking dreaming lineages now, more of the ancient people. That the ancient people got really tired of, the trespassing of the white people, and the disregard for native land and the caretaking of the native land and the animals. And so a lot of the ancient, medicine people of this land created these portholes on them that actually went nowhere. So once you walked into one, if you were not trained, you didn't have training on how to get out, you were literally locked in there with your body forever. And nobody was going to come and release you, and you wouldn't be going anywhere, right? And so if they were able to, and she was like, totally serious about this. She said there's areas, she said this is why you never really want to go walking around on indigenous people's land, because if they have set up traps like this, and you get caught in it, you're never going to be released from it, and you're never going to go anywhere. That porthole isn't going to take you anywhere, because it's more like a prison, right? It's an energetic prison, and people won't see you. Most likely you could see out and through, and you could scream your head off at people walking by, and they'd never hear you. So it'd be like a forever kind of a prison. And so if they were able to do that kind of stuff, then they must have known that there was a way to get out of this, propaganda giant kind of a movie set. And the extraterrestrials, the ETs, the Greys talk a lot about how a lot of the ETs come here for different kinds of things, to come check on the soil and the water. And a lot of them used to take away a lot of the plants, because they would use some of the plants to re-terraform other places. But they specifically were told to stay away from the humans, not to talk to the humans. So they were coming here more like on missions and jobs, right? Not really caring about the subject matter, which is like the humans, like ignore them at all costs, and don't pay attention to them, because they would be like the scientists in the lab, and we would be the rats in the, thing like running around, kind of an idea. But they talk a lot about how every time, and this is what I like about the Tartarian thing, they talk a lot about how every time they've wiped out, humans, what they do is they redesign a new movie set. So, I was working with those concepts a long time ago. So when I started seeing things like on the Egyptian pyramids, when it started coming out that there were like little helicopter and airplane, Egyptian symbols on walls, I started dying laughing because that was proof. It was like the ETs, making a joke at how stupid we are, right? Because supposedly, there were no helicopters or airplanes during the time that they made the pyramids. But the thing is they made all those so that it was a movie set, right? That so we would believe something or spend all of our time being distracted on trying to figure out the past so that we could figure out who we are and maybe figure out our future, and all this other stuff. And it's like so ludicrous. And now with the Tatarian people talking about the Tatarian work and exposing it, it looks like, there wasn't like one big global flood. It looks like periodically they just wiped out different, rats in a maze that they set up the design for periodically. And it looks like it could have been happening every 200, 300 years. And there was a massive one, it looks like around, what we would call the 1800s. Like they're proving it, that there was a big mud flood in certain areas of the world. And some of these buildings had, better technology than we have now. This one guy, he shows this building in Asia that's like on stilts, and it's mostly just a roof and how the design is. And the wind starts to whip underneath this roof, and it starts to hum. And then the antenna on the top of the building starts to put out a light, a halo of light from the way that the wind is moving underneath this roof. And that is not, that's technology that's been hidden from us, but that's from another, group of people that were probably like wiped out. So it looks like, they're, as, we're going along and they put some, I think it's more difficult for them now. They would have to do a massive wipeout of the whole population because, we have the web and the internet, and it kind of all connects us to all the weather that's going on around the globe. And I think that's kind of like, what's going on now is they're using a lot of different efforts to kind of like wipe us out. And they're working on kind of speeding it up a little bit. But, so they would have wiped out different sections of whole people. And on the one video, they were talking a lot about how, there would have been these giants, right, that were before us. And some humans of our time frame cohabitated with some of these giants. But when the mud floods happened, pretty much all of them, but very few giants survived. And that's why a lot of these buildings that we see in these ancient cities have these giant doorways. And some of these older buildings, that we have that they keep demolishing, which these buildings would last forever because of the bricks. So I think that we kind of have to really, take a look back at what we believe and what we think is going on, and what the movie sets have been so far designed. I believe that a lot of this kind of new age stuff has also been propaganda and designed. And then periodically they control the narrative, right? I mean, okay, so we know the media controls the narrative. So how come, so people throw out words like Mandela, whoop, everybody picks it up. That's a controlled narrative. People throw out the word galactics. Whoop, that's a controlled narrative. People throw out the word, reset, revalue, GCR. Whoop, controlled narrative. Once they start putting this stuff out, then they start, people pick it up. And they start talking in this language, right? And this is how they know whether it's working or not, how well the mind control stuff is working. And I'm not saying there isn't a way out. I'm not saying that there is, not something on the other side. But I think that more and more I have to laugh at, the things that we believe and what we take at face value and what we think the narrative is when everybody is taking these kinds of narratives on and not really actually, kind of looking at the facts or the world around them, and would rather not look at the facts or the world around them, right? In a very, take it in and, you know, mull it around and then and decide what your placement is going to be in it. And the ETs always talk about, the Greys talk about how poorly the set designs are. You know, as this world, as they keep wiping people out and putting new people on, they said the world gets worse, like the design of it. They said, you know, like the pyramids and a lot of these, you know, pyramids around the world and a lot of this other stuff, you know, actually there are planets that actually have, you know, types of things that are like that. But when they were designed here, they were designed so poorly, and they did it in such a lazy way that they didn't even finish a lot of the set designs, right? There's still a lot of areas that are, you know, not really fully completed. But I think that you have to look at the stuff that just doesn't make sense. Like, for example, you know, when they're talking about, look, ancient Egyptians must have known about the future because, you know, they have a hydroglyph of a helicopter or an airplane, you know, on the wall in this pyramid. And it's like, that is the telltale sign that it's ludicrous, that it was designed like a joke, ha ha ha. You know, let's see how long these humans, like this batch of humans, you know, mind F's themselves over this. Because the ones that are going to see it are going to have helicopters and planes in their reality. So then, you know, because we can't fathom that a big joke has been played on us, right? We decide that, you know, oh, they're time traveling, right? And we start to make up all this other crazy stuff instead of, because we can't deal with the fact that we may be rats in a maze and we may be the ultimate, you know, mind control program that is controlled on so many different levels in the narrative control, just to see what we can do, how we can behave. And I think there's a possibility for the smarter of us to be, you know, harvested off into a new world. You know, I don't believe in the whole shadow planet thing, or that, you know, there's these other planets other than Earth happening. Because the thing is in a heartbeat, if these extraterrestrials wanted to fix the planet, they could heartbeat it. If they could do a movie set of pyramids and all kinds of design work in a short phase before they implement a new human species into that set, they could totally, you know, re-terraform the whole planet, like, let's just say in a month, probably. So if they really, really wanted to fix things, why is the narrative that, you know, they have to fight people? They have to fight these other people, that there's this fight of good and bad going on. And you know, the thing is like, that's a narrative here. It's the 2D, the light and the dark, the saint, the sinner, the judge, the jury, you know, the however you want to play it out. And so it's a narrative that we've been sold. And so it's easy to put this kind of information into our narrative that there's somehow this battle going on. You know, this battle between the extraterrestrials. You know, what if they're just all in on it? What if some provide the biological material, like the Greys? They collect. I mean, I have clients right now that are telling me about, you know, they're having, you know, tissues removed and tissues implanted into their physical body. And they're waking up. So the ETs are taking deep tissues, parts of deep tissues, to do what? Grow new biological beings, right? Machines like us, you know, to put the energy, you know, in the battery in. And they also are putting tissues in their bodies, like in their arm and stuff like that, to be incubated for a period of time. And they're no longer using implants because, you know, we've smartened up to the implants. You know, we've kind of woke up to this whole implanting thing. Well, what what do they put implants and chips in here in this world? They put them in cows. So that way, if you have 20,000 cows and it breaks out of the fence and it destroys part of the town, they know who's financially responsible, because all those cows have a chip and they're tracked by satellite. They put chips in your animals. They almost force chips in your animals. They're forcing chips into people's bodies. So a lot of people are starting to realize, like, well, this whole abduction thing and people getting a lot of chips. I have quite a few of these bad ET experiences where I've been taken for biological data and information. Sometimes, they've been so lazy about it in the last few years. Like, I wake up and I have nosebleeds. I have blood coming out of my ears. I've got blood all over my shirt. They didn't even take the time to take my clothes off anymore, right? They just, then throw me back into the mix. I have one video where I have blood splotches on my tank top on both sides. Thick blood dried on my shirt. So now they're using these like holographic symbols that almost look like they're wherever they're taking out the biological information or the material, or implanting it to, for whatever reason, to be incubated in the arm or the leg or whatever else. My clients are waking up with all kinds of crazy symbols, basically, that look like they've been lasered in to the tissue that lasts, maybe like, 1 or 2 days, and then they disappear. But I'm pretty sure that when they take you up and they put a light on you, that they can see where the biological tissues are, or where they've harvested stuff from before. So I think that they're getting away from the whole, microchipping humans to track us or to figure out where they've taken biological material or where they've put it in. They're getting away from that and they're using something else. I literally have a client who is MK Ultra, and she's had some crazy experiences, and we're working on doing integration work. I work with her online to help her to like integrate a lot of stuff. She's like she's old school MK Ultra, and she had a doctor's appointment, and she went in. The doctor was looking at her back, and it had all these because she'd just been abducted, right? So she had all these crazy lasered symbols into her back and her arms and stuff, where they're doing experimental stuff. And he said, "What's that?" And she said, "You know what? You just don't even want to know." He's like, "That's crazy looking stuff." She said, "Yeah, please, I don't even want to talk about it. Just take my blood, do the test, talk to me about how my general health is, and we're just not even going to go to these things." So I think we have to kind of get away from, or one of the things that I really focus in on is getting away from all the narratives that we're being fed, all these catchphrases and all this other stuff, and start to try to look at the facts so that, I can like ultimately pull myself out and maybe put on a backpack with my dog and start hiking to the ends of whatever the earth is, right? And seeing if I can't find those doors out and those doors in. And, there's that one that's that square in that rock down in South America that the shamans are always, in Peru, are always working with, that say that beings, come through it and leave. And that even some of their ancient shaman, brotherhood have gone out through there and gone for a period of time and then come back, to teach things. So I think we have to really watch the whole narrative across the board, and kind of like, there's some really interesting stuff that's popping up on YouTube too that's really kind of sick. There are some people who are doing these fake interviews with reptilians, and they're totally fake. I listened to one for like 3 minutes. It was like the most fakest thing I've ever even been involved with. So now they're starting to like move the narrative into like, alternative media about, this fake interviews with these reptilians and blah, 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 blah. Now they're real. I had a client who's a hybrid who was a chief financial officer, the highest, one of the highest positions of the International Research Institute. And we would have a lot of interesting conversations from him from a reptilian point of view about, what's going on here and, truth. Why we had those conversations, I'm not really sure, probably because I asked the right questions, I showed intelligence, and, I wasn't really afraid. I've had a lot of clients that are different kinds of beings, and they're hybrids, and so I don't get overly, too freaked out. I just focus in on their physical body and try to help them sort out things, to make their lives easier. And then, they pay me really well to help them, and take care of them. So we really have to be careful of our spiritual, controlled narratives, a lot of the narratives that, we're being sold right now. And I think right now we're crossing into the age of the most disinformation period that we could ever, deal with. And I've heard this from some of my contacts that they're gearing up, and I don't really know if this is going to be real or not, because a lot of the extraterrestrials that other people on the internet say that they deal with, I've never seen, right? I've never seen a blue avian. I have seen, I had a direct experience with a bird humanoid who was probably about 6 foot tall, in a field at 5 a.m, that I think was trying to communicate with me, or talk to me or feel me out or something. And the experience was pretty intense. But they don't really, talk about, well, the earth is going to end, or there's going to be nuclear war, or that you have to stop this, and that you have, I don't have experiences with ETs that make me the hero. You're the hero. You have to go tell the people. You have to, save the world. My star family, when they come to visit me, we don't talk about anything that goes on in this world. We talk about, how are you doing? How are you? How's your experience? What are you going through? Nowadays I just convey that I really hate this world, that it's a really horrible place, and they sent me here. And I think that they sent me here to collect data, to figure out, really what was going on here, what is the experience, and what is the experience. And I always tell them, don't ever send anybody else here, because this is a really vile place. I mean, I've been to other planets. I've seen how the other things work. And this place is really, really a nightmare. This is really like hell. And I think that they give us, they're giving us a falsehood, and they're giving us distractions by trying to give us some kind of narrative to believe in. And I think it's because the AI, part of the AI system, the bad one that's been implemented, is a little bit broken. I think that this whole thing going on with the Schumann resonance, that's going on right now, it's because it's broken, right? And it's a system, right? So it isn't because the planet's evolving, or this is happening, or there's a new age, or people are becoming enlightened. It has nothing to do with that. It's just the system is broken. And this is the other problem. If you don't have a Schumann frequency, right, working, because, there are physical scientific stuff to support that the Schumann frequency helps our heart, right? And if our heart is a major power generator, right, it generates power for our energy field, right, to help us keep the biosuit going. And that Schumann frequency isn't working, then what's going to happen to our biological machines, right? Because there's like a invisible plug-in, there's an invisible connection between the two. So the fact that the Schumann frequency is going off, coming on, going off, especially in the last 2 weeks, makes me realize like the whole AI system is not collapsing, but let's just say malfunctioning. And that should be kind of disconcerting. And we're led to believe that, it's because of evolution, that we're evolving. And there was something that I heard on someone's channel the other day that, and this stuff really kind of, let me just tell you how bad it pisses me off. And she was talking about how, number one, she's using, she's supposed to be kind of a psychic channeler person that's in the know. And she's using these photos on her YouTube channel from NASA showing that the core of the sun is gone and that the sun is getting ready to implode into a supernova. Now, number one, I'm not really sure. I mean, there's a lot of proof now that the moon is faked, that it was dragged into position to what we're seeing. And if we have a whole atmosphere that isn't even real, and those stars that we see aren't even real, that maybe they're part of the top shield of the atmosphere, then we can't really decide if the sun is real or not. And the other thing, too, is do we have satellites that float right over the top of the sun? Like, the thing we should question is where are they getting these images? Who are taking these images, right? Where are these images coming from? As far as I know, I didn't know that we had satellites that were out past the sun. I mean, if we can't keep, the thing that we send out that goes around, from burning up because the sun, whatever, is too hot on it, then how in the hell did we create some bullshit satellite that's supposedly taking pictures, This is the other thing, too, people don't even ask themselves when it comes to the whole Mars thing. That whole thing's like a total fraud. Because, they show the Mars lander landing on Mars and all this other stuff. Who's taking the picture of the Mars lander landing on Mars? What, is there some dude there? Because as far as we know, they told us, so we have to start really looking at a lot of this fiction that we're sold. Like, we don't even think about it. We don't even, put two and two together, about these things. And so she's using these NASA images of the core of the sun is gone, which I think that they're doing all kinds of things because they're kind of notifying us that they're ending this world, right? They're ending our experience or, whatever is going to happen. I mean, they're constantly telling us this stuff in movies and whatever else about, kind of like what they're doing because they're controlling the narrative. They're, doing the mind control, so that we just readily accept what's happening and what's going on. But anyway, so this woman on the YouTube channel, and so she's talking about how, all of these spaceships are ready to take, the people away. And as, we're going away, we will see the sun explode into a supernova, right? And that'll be the end of the sun and probably the earth. And then, her last comment is anybody that is left here are damned. And I'm thinking, wow, you are supposed to be an enlightened being, right? Conveying enlightened information. And you just said what? You just said that everybody that's still here when all this takes place is damned and will be damned forevermore. It's like, wow, that is just such not an enlightened statement. If you were really an enlightened being, you would be trying to figure out how to get all your extraterrestrial buddies and your ships to help you convey information to get the population to decide to go onto the ships in a good way instead of making threats. Because that's no different than the Catholic Church, right? Making threats to people or the population or the priests. You know, you're not saved by Jesus, and so you deserve, you know, whatever happens, evil happens to you, right? You deserve whatever you're going to get because you're on the outside, you're damned. So those kinds of narratives really tick me off. And I have no idea. I put it out, you know, in the internet through some of my other contacts that I have who study a lot of this stuff that, you know, is going on around us and find clues. But I put it out and asking them if they thought that the sun was going to explode and it was going to become a supernova, and that, you know, like it's in the process of now. But this is the thing, is we shouldn't be afraid. Because just because we stay here, we choose to stay here, we choose not to go on the spaceships, right? I'm not going anywhere with anyone I don't know. You haven't built a relationship with me and I can't trust you. I'm not getting on your spaceship. I don't care if it's the only escape, right? Because I, number one, learned early on in my life that fairy tales were a narrative of mind control, especially like Prince Charming and a horse. And you meet the right guy and he comes in on a white horse, and you just don't even ask anything about the guy. What's your name? Where are you from? Can I meet your family? Can we date for a while? Can I test drive, you know, before I buy? But no, we're taught, no, just get on the horse. Don't, you know, listen to your own mind. Don't have rational thinking. Don't use your critical mind abilities that you have to decide if you should get on that horse and ride off into the sunset, because there's no information disclosed to you, right? There's no information about where you're going, what you're headed. I mean, how do you know that it's not going to be worse? You don't. They just tell you to, like, go with the flow. Don't think about it. Just, you know, do it. Because you're probably never going to get a chance like this again. You know, meeting your prince is only going to happen once in a lifetime. You know, and all this, you know, other crap that goes along with it. And then, you know, who knows what happens to you when you ride off into the sunset. So as far as I'm concerned, you know, a lot of this exposure about the ETs and them wanting to take people off planet, there are people that are, you know, I guess leaving off planet now. You know what? I don't know you. I don't have a relationship with you. You have not disclosed to me about your planet or where it's at or any kind of information. And just because this world is supposedly going to blow up, doesn't really give me the motivation to hop aboard your spaceship and go anywhere with you. I'm already a prisoner here. So if I get on that spaceship, now I'm your prisoner. It's like, so where are you taking me next, right? Without having a choice. So I think whether this whole thing blows up, the sun blows up, there's a supernova or whatever else, for me personally, I'm staying. Because at least then I'll be totally free. If the whole thing like just blows sky high, finally I'm free. And I didn't rely on somebody to come and save me, to, you know, my savior to take me to the next, you know, torture chamber or the next, you know, reality. And here we go again with languaging. You know, I've been around a lot of native teachers, indigenous teachers that, you know, do lots of different work with certain kinds of ETs because they have contracts. Like the Hopi have contracts with certain types of extraterrestrials, and in the past history, the extraterrestrials would bring their offspring to the Hopi, right? So the Hopi could teach them, you know, in ceremonial activation training, you know, type ways. And then they would come back and get their offspring. But that's rare. That's a rare thing. But for the most part, a lot of the native people that I've worked with and talked to call it the harvest, the great harvest that's coming. And then in the Bible, they call it the rapture. And then, the New Agers call it ascension, right? But it's the same thing. And here we go again with that language.